Hey everybody, and welcome to the Rebel Show. How's everybody doing on this post-Christmas week? It's the 26th. I just want to let everybody know I've been away for a few weeks because I got a pretty serious, like throat cold or something, and it was intense, I was fighting. It took a couple weeks to get over it. And on those, my voice was destroyed, so I couldn't do a show. But I just want to encourage everybody that while I was fighting that, I took a few days off, and then I went back to work. And when I was back at work, one of our teachers was saying, he was using fighting things with boxing terms. So he was like, not all fights are one round. As Christians, not all fights are one round. Sometimes you just got to go round after round. And he was basically saying, don't give up. Just keep fighting till you win. And that's what we got to remember as Christians, because it's easy to fight for a while and then give up and say this doesn't work. No, you fight till you win. Even if it takes 20, 30, 40 rounds, your goal is to fight till you win. It's important. So I'm back. I'm feeling pretty good now. And I just want to encourage everybody out there to not give up when things hit them, to keep going, because if you don't give up, you'll win. It's just the way it is. God's word is true forever. But I want to talk a little bit about history today. Christopher Columbus is a guy that's being attacked recently, and I've just been thinking about this, so I was researching him a little bit, and I just want to read a little bit of a few things about him on this episode. So, Christopher Columbus, born Cristoforo Columbus in 1451 in Genoa, Italy, to a lower middle-class wool weaver. So he was not a wealthy man at all. So he was a devout Christian, though. He sought God, he read the Bible, and he believed the Lord led him on this journey that he did. In the late 1400s, the Islamic State was busy conquering Europe and stopping surrounding trade with all the different nations because they were invading and basically conquering and stealing all the loot, or they were just stopping it altogether. So land routes were cut off from Europe and India and China. So this inspired Christopher to propose and seek out a new sea trade route to get around some of these wars. So Columbus was funded by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, whose daughter was Catherine of Aragon, who was married to Henry VIII. Remember that? King Henry took over the Catholic Church in England and instituted his own new church called the Church of England, so he could get divorced because his wife of 16 years didn't bear a son. I don't know if you ever saw any episodes of The Tudors or anything like that, but it kind of talks about King Henry. I just think that's interesting. Also with King Henry that I think is interesting is his advisors, once he took over the church, recommended to stop using the Latin Bible and instead use an English Bible. The Matthew Coverdale Bible came from that decision. I think that's interesting because, through a lot of having an English Bible is really what helped the United States with its foundation, because everybody had access to it. And until that point, there was less access. And now having an English Bible was pretty good. A lot of people suffered from it in England, though. So Columbus thought he landed in India after he started sailing, and that's why he named the inhabitants Indians. In reality, we can blame the Islamic conquest of the East for motivating Columbus to sail to the West. Think about it. It's because of those wars that Columbus decided to do what he did. So in some areas of the country, Columbus Day has been renamed Indigenous People Day. I don't think that's right at all. I think we should keep it Columbus Day because Columbus wasn't the tyrant that he's being made out to be today. The left, the hard left, loathes Columbus because he personifies Western civilization. A transnational devout Christian, illiterate of low birth, he single-handedly revitalized a dying Europe whose lands the Muslims invaded and had been steadily conquering for centuries. I think this is interesting that through probably seeking God, Columbus was inspired to make a change, and look at the change he made. It's pretty cool, one of the lies that's out there right now is Columbus promoted the sex slavery. And this lie comes from a letter vindicating his actions to his financiers, Ferdinand and Isabella. The motivation for the lie is taken out of context, and the quote's just one sentence of the complete letter, and here's the quote. For one woman, they give 100 castellanos, and that's a Spanish gold coin, as for a farm, and this sort of trading is very common. And there's already a great number of merchants who go in, search for girls, and there are at this moment from 9 or 10 on sale. They fetch at a good price. Let their age be what it will. So they take that sentence and they make it say, man, this guy's promoting this trade. This guy's promoting the sex trade. But they don't continue. So they try to prove that he's a villain without continuing to read. And let's go on a little further. So these captive women, they told the Caribbean men, use them with such cruelty as would scarcely be believed, that they would eat the children which they bear of them, and they will bring up the children only by the native wives. So these women were abused, and so here's kind of a backstory on this. Columbus returns from a journey to find a bunch of his men dead, and he asks some of the local natives that he knows what happened, and they tell him, hey, a tribe that's dangerous and violent did this. And he asks, say, hey, let's take me to the tribe. Let's go see these people. And upon arrival, Columbus and these men find there's no men in this camp, and there's women in cages. And he finds out the tribe is called the Caribs. This is where we get the word Caribbean from. And he learns at that time that these guys have eaten the men, or the tribe members have eaten the men and impregnated the women so they can dine on the infants. This is amazing. I've never heard of evils like this. Who thinks like this, right? Columbus just comes back from a trip and he finds this stuff out is insane to me. So Christopher comments on these men's actions, these Caribs. He says, I declare solemnly that a great number of men have been to the Indies who did not deserve baptism in the eyes of God or men, and who are now returning thither. You know, that's like saying, man, these guys can't even get God's forgiveness. They're so bad. You know, so he's against this type of action, this type of trade. He's against what these guys are doing to women. And so what he does is he goes out with some of these other natives, and they capture or kill a bunch of these cannibal tribe members for this heinous act. Can you imagine that? I'm so glad we live in America where the rule of law mostly exists, because back then in these times, it was just wars. So I've seen, like, what led me to start thinking about this was pictures on Twitter and different places I've seen where people flipping off Christopher Columbus on Columbus Day because of his actions to the natives. And really, it's totally wrong. He was good to the native people. He had his people treat them fairly. They engaged in trade and purchasing. I mean, they were good to him. You know, a lot later in history is when people started expanding more into the West, and they started doing poorly to the Indians, and they started taking land and stuff. But it wasn't this guy. He didn't bring this stuff in. Another interesting lie is that the indigenous people were peaceful without slavery or oppression. You know, modern revisionism of history tries to portray Columbus as a villain like Hitler or Saddam Hussein. It says that with the introduction of the white man, that paradise of the natives was destroyed. And these lies come from a propaganda book called A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. So this is saying that Christopher Columbus and the white man brought the idea of slavery and the idea of these violent things. But if you really start researching this and reading some, you find out that the New World was full of slavery and murder and genocide, sodomy and sexual exploitation and barbary. I mean, the white man probably came over here in shock from some of the things they saw. The natives were always at war and stealing land from each other. A good place to find some more info on this, I think I encourage people to listen to a few things I have to say and start researching a little bit. And one of the places I like to go is Wall Builders, because the Wall Builders people have the actual documents of a lot of these historians. They're not reading textbooks by historians. They're actually reading the text of these people. I've held some of them in my hand when I went to look at their museum. And also historian William Federer has several books on Columbus and tons of different topics. And, you know, when you start to find out history, you start to see things are way different than we thought. I don't have time to get into everything, but I just want you to know that Columbus was a good guy. He didn't do everything right. I'm not saying he was perfect or anything, but he sought God and he did good things out there. And some of the lies out there need to be altered and showed the truth, you know? But there are lies out there, and they are intended to make you hate America and its founding fathers intentionally. Because it's really hard to bring tyranny to a patriotic nation. And that's where the country is looking towards right now, is indoctrinate the people with lies, change history so that they hate the founding, so they can get rid of our Constitution and basically rewrite anything they want. And we just have to be slave to them. And that's not how we are. That's not how we exist. We have to stand up, say no, and stand behind our Constitution. We cannot let this country go down. It's the last greatest hope for mankind. So that's why I wanted to talk about Columbus a little bit, just so we can see that he's not a tyrant. He did some good things. There's a lot of lies going out there. And really, I just want to inspire people to go, maybe I should go look into this a little bit and see what's out there. I gave you a couple good sources. So be ready for like a fire hydrant worth of information. You know, it's intense. It's good reading. So, you know, I thank you. Thank you for sticking with me. I'll keep these coming. And you know what? We're in a good place. The country's in a good place. God's on our side. Thank you very much.